We had a really productive policymaker meeting, and we'll talk a little bit about that here today. And then some of the work, of course, we have to do that's policymaker related or originated, I would say, is coming up on the main part of the agenda today. So I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the Transportation Advisory Board of the Metropolitan Council. It is November 19, 2025, 12:11 p.m. And is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved, Anderson.
Need a second?
Second, Morris.
All right. We got a motion and a second to approve the agenda as published. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the agenda as published, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, man, that was really a lack of enthusiasm on that. Opposed? Agenda's approved. We got something to work from. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address the tab on a matter of concern to them? Okay. All right. Seeing no one coming forward, we're going to go to the report section of the agenda. And as I mentioned, we had a policymaker work group session started at 10 this morning. Went for a couple hours, primarily around the one kind of a remaining hot topic of community considerations that was started years ago as a commitment to considering equity in different forms, and we've never been able to quite figure out how to make that work in a community context. So we continue that work, that journey, and we're talking about how you factor it in, the qualitative, quantitative aspects of it, the weighting of it relative to other categories, and we think we had a comprehensive enough discussion there on that topic to be able to send it back to the technical people to get their thoughts on these 11 different categories and where community considerations ought to be in the scheme of the weighting on the scoring. So that's kind of a brief up to date on what happened at the policymaker workshop. I also want to take this opportunity to welcome our St. Paul tab alternate, and that is Molly Coleman. And Molly, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about yourself and how you got here.
Amazing. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Molly Coleman. I serve on the St. Paul City Council from representing Ward 4, so the northwest part of the city. I've been on the council for a little bit over 2 months at this point. Very excited to be our tab alternate to Councilmember Sarah Jost, and excited to be here for my first meeting for the next 3 hours.
All right. Thanks. And Katie, so we're not going to have you around much longer, I hear.
That is correct. Okay, so I did not win my re-election campaign, so the whole city council will be changing its organization in January, and I'm making the pitch to as many people as possible to try to be on the tab because it's a really impactful role shaping not only the city but the whole region and our transportation priorities. So I'm sure there will be a great representative here next year from Minneapolis.
Yeah, well, our condolences on the loss. We're going to miss you here.
Yes, me too.
Thank you. TAB Exec Committee, it's that time of the year when we have to start thinking about populating the TAB Executive Committee for next year. Remember, we got the board chair gets appointed by the chair of the council. We got a MnDOT appointee, Metropolitan Council appointee. We need 2 county members. We need 1 city of the first class member, either Minneapolis or St. Paul. And we need 2 other members on the executive committee from the remaining cities that are part of the region. And we need 1 citizen member and 1 of the modal or remaining agency members to fill that last spot on the executive committee. So start thinking about that. If you have interest in serving on the executive committee, let Elaine know, and we'll make those decisions here. And we have a slate of people to recommend in January. All right. I'm going to jump now to agency reports. And do we have anybody here from MPCA? All right, we'll jump by that one. I know that Bridget Reef has been having some dialogue with both Elaine and myself. She'll be here, but she'll be a little bit late. Carl, of course, won't be here, but we'll let her. We'll kind of work her into the agenda as we go along. Let her give us an update on the MAC, and then Deb Barber, Met Council.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of things today. First of all, just want to report out on one of our ABRT lines. So in June, we opened the new line along Lake Marshall and Selby. We're just 3 months into operation. The Beeline's September average weekly ridership of nearly 9,700 rides was 39% higher than Route 21 the same month last year. The Beeline just welcomed its 1 millionth rider since service started last June. We were able to have a great celebration in St. Paul for that because due to the unfortunate events on June 14th, we were not able to do the opening, but we were able to really celebrate and have a great community-facing event for that. Also, as I reported before, I was sitting in the chair's role as an interim chair. There's going to be a new chair who starts on December 1st, so you'll have stuck with me here at TAB for a little while longer. And then we also wanted to make sure, as we're talking about different openings, we have districts, citizen reps districts A through D, and the transit and multimodal, and also ultimately for districts E and F, all have vacancies coming up. Applications are open, and we're just trying to push out there that priority review will be given to applications submitted by Thursday, December 4th. So we hope to do all those interviews in December so that all the seats are full when we come back next year.
Good. Thanks, Deb. Any questions for Member Barber? All right, I inadvertently jumped by Sheila Kalpe, who's here substituting in for Connie. So I'm going to go back to Sheila now for a MnDOT update.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm Sheila Kalpe. I'm from MnDOT. I'm the alternate for Connie. Yes, indeed. I know we typically give an update on the safety statistics. I think alarming enough, we do have less fatalities than we did at this time of last year, but since the last time Connie was here, we've had another 37 fatalities that happened on the system. So I think that number is alarming, like 335 crashes that have resulted in fatality for multiple modes across our system. So we continue to just see an alarming number. So thank you for all making it here safely today, and please make it home safely and continue. So always be aware. Also, another thing that is on the docket for us is the Minnesota Rail Service Improvement Grant that was just announced. It's for freight rail service improvement projects. It's about $4 million is currently available for grants. Elaine will be sending out additional information about that grant and where you might be able to learn a bit more about it. But again, a number of criteria for eligible projects, including railroad, rail shippers, political subdivisions of Minnesota. Federal agencies seek to complete major improvements or rehab. So again, an important thing that we hear a lot at our agency about, and an opportunity now to apply for some funding. The applications are due January 9th. And again, snow and ice season, we've, those of us that live in MnDOT and many of our city county partners, we see the big trucks that are coming. So stay back, make sure that you prepare ahead for anything that might be coming your way. So again, Elaine will be sharing some information about that and some helpful driving tips as well. So thank you for having me here today.
Yeah, a big thank you to you and MnDOT. We got the intersection open at Highway 100 and 50th.
Yes.
So that joint project between the city and MnDOT, people are finally able to move around a little bit more effectively.
Yeah, we're always thankful when it's nearing the end of construction season, in particular those that are actually completed this year. That's carryover, of course. So.
Do you have any specific data around the 37 folks that lost their lives? Was it, what percent were automobile versus motorcycle versus pedestrian?
Geez, I'll pull that up from Molly gave it to me.
By an ocean liner.
Yeah. 40% of the crashes this year, right, as a whole, as of the end of October, the fatalities were in the metropolitan area, right? So if we start thinking about 66% of those were pedestrians, right? Those that are very vulnerable on the roadway. 23% were on bicycles. Even though that number is less than what it was last year at this time, it's still alarming to have 23, which again accounts to 3 total. But again, of the overall crashes, that's a significant number, and that's just in the metropolitan area. Motorcycle crashes have gone down this year. It's the lowest it's been since before COVID, but it's still 22. So when you have a number of ATVs, side-by-sides that continue to be both impactful in our metropolitan area and our greater Minnesota districts, but 24 pedestrians. So again, I can provide the additional information to you that just happened in those last 39 particularly and where they happened. I'm happy to do that.
Here, why don't you give that to Elaine, and then she can
Thank you.
disseminate it to everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, yeah, thanks, Sheila. Any questions for MnDOT, for Sheila? All right, Bridget, I see that you have arrived. Thank you. Hustling over here from the airport. Give us an update. I know that you had some other commitments here, so thanks for getting here as quickly as you could.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Apologize for being late. Happy holidays to everybody. Just a couple things today to report from the world of airports. We all know the shutdown is over now. It affected about 400 flights in total from MSP. We got off easy, I think, compared to some other airports. The worst day we had was a week ago Sunday, and we should be back to normal by this Friday is the expectation. So hopefully no one here was affected by that. And we should be well-staffed through the holidays. If any of you watch Twin Cities Live, they will be broadcasting live from Terminal 1 tomorrow as part of the upcoming holiday travel season. I won't be able to see it or be there, but if you happen to be tuning in, keep an eye out for that. We want to express our thanks to MnDOT for completing the 494 bridge project. That was impactful to the airport travelers, and so it's good that that is completed now. This year, our airports participate in a North American-wide airport carbon accreditation program that Airports Council International puts on. It's one of our primary industry partners. Our airport MSP has been at level 3 now for the second year in a row. And what that means is not only are we reducing our carbon emissions year over year compared to the previous 3-year average, but we're also involving our stakeholders on those scope 3 emissions, which are emissions that are not within our control. And so we're recognized for that. This was the first year we enrolled all 6 of our reliever airports into that program as well. So we're at level 1 now with those 6 reliever airports. So it's a big step for us in our carbon emissions journey, but worth reporting, I think, to the group. Also through Airports Council International, those of you who remember Jeff Hamill, he was our long-term CEO and executive director for 38 years. He was recognized with a national award, the William E. Downs Award, which is recognition of outstanding leadership in promoting the cause of airports and aviation as a vital part of the local, national, and worldwide community. So it's really good to see him finally, after all these years, recognized for his contributions. Lastly, we have a couple of departures. Well, one from this group, so Commissioner Crimmins is not going to be a member anymore. We are working on who's going to backfill that. In the meantime, you're stuck with me. While we go through some changes at our commission, so Rick King, who's been involved with the Airports Commission since 2007, is stepping down. He is retiring from the board. This week is his last official week with us. And so working with the powers that be to find a replacement for him. We also have a handful of other commission seats that are open right now or will be at the end of the year. So we're going to have a little bit of a turnover with our group, and we'll see what our new leadership brings. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, good. Questions for Bridget? Yes, go ahead, Beck.
Quick one, I've been spending some time at the airport, and I've noticed that when you're coming, both Terminal 1 and Terminal 2, as your people are trying to pick up the arriving pass, they are putting out these orange cones, and they're really restricting the lanes. Is there anything that can be done about it? I can't see how that helps the traffic move more quickly or smoothly through there by really restricting the lanes and making it very hard. I know they're trying to push the cars to the far end, but it's a nightmare.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we do what we can with the 2 lanes that we have that are trying to funnel all that traffic into the west side of our curb in front of the terminal. The best advice I can give you is to pick up on the east curb, which is the first left turn instead of that second left turn, or pick up downstairs, or drop off downstairs, or pick up upstairs. We actually have 4 different curbs that can be used for pickup and drop off, and we're trying to find ways to market those and sign those so that people know that there are alternatives when it's really busy like that. For Terminal 2, we don't have that option, but in our capital program for 2026, we are looking to add an additional lane of traffic. So we'll have 5 lanes instead of 4, which should help with some of that bypass traffic after they drop somebody off to be able to get past and get out, while others are sitting at the curb waiting by bay claim for pickup. No promises. Congestion is one of our biggest things. We do also have in our program coming up, and you will see our capital program next month coming back to you. Starting in 2028, our 2 closest parking structures at Terminal 1, so the green ramp and the gold ramp, they're reaching their end of life, and both of them need to come down and be built back up. Tremendously huge project, very impactful. If you think about our trams, think about how people from the red and the blue and the silver parking ramp get to the terminal is through that same corridor. When those demolitions occur, creates finally the opportunity for us to soften those 90-degree curves, create some curbside that's actually more effective for handling that traffic, and prescribing very specific uses for specific curbs to help diversify that traffic. It's years away still, but at least it's finding its way into the program finally.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. And if the signage could go up at Terminal 1 really quickly, I think it would really help over the holidays.
We do have dynamic signing that does help. We are calling it, I think, the flex lane. Easy, I can't remember what it's called, but there's signage to get you to the east curb. If you drop off on the east side, you just have to go in the building and then either up and over the road or down and under the road. It's super convenient. There's never anybody over there. So, and Delta 1, if any of you are the primo Delta customers, I am not. Delta 1 customers now are directed to drop off on that curb because it's wide open and really easy for those passengers.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Member Petrick. You haven't won any new awards this last month? It seems like every month you're getting an award
Well,
for
we
something.
did, but I'll report on those next time.
All right, okay. And do we know who the new chair is going to be?
Mr. Chair, members, I do not. I don't know that anything has happened since last night when we had a meeting with our commissioners yesterday. There's been no news, at least that's filtered its way down to me.
All right, okay. Thank you for that. That prompt any questions? All right, thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
Gary Hansen isn't with us today to report out for the Suburban Transit Authority providers, but he did send a report in for Elaine to read, so Elaine will provide that information.
The Suburban Providers Report continued overall ridership increases. Maple Grove Transit reports record express ridership and is working on potential service improvements resulting from its joint transit needs assessment study with Plymouth Metrolink. Southwest Transit's overall ridership was up more than 15% in October from a year ago. Express ridership was its highest post-pandemic, and on-demand service was at a record high. Minnesota Valley Transit Authority's overall ridership was up more than 7% year over year. Minneapolis and St. Paul Express service were up 11% and 13% respectively. Connect Microtransit ridership was up 35%, setting a new record in October at over 19,000 rides. From November 7th through November 21st, MVTA is offering free rides on Connect to make it easier for people to access food pantries within the Connect service area.
All right, good. Thanks for that report. I'm not going to ask you to stand for questions. All right. So, I mentioned earlier, we asked you to come in a little bit early today, a half hour early. We've got a lot of work to do here, and we're really putting a burden on our TAC chair to lead us through all of these items. And I don't know, Chair MacPherson, if you had anything to report out from a report standpoint for the TAC before we get into the actual work of the day, but I'll give you that opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, members. I think the only thing to note is for a majority of the year, we do meet virtually. And for the November meeting, we did meet in person so that we could facilitate open discussion on the items that are before you today. So we did have a robust discussion on several of the items, and we'll get into that as we move through these. Otherwise, beyond that, originally we were thinking the actual solicitation applications were going to come before us in December. Now looking at that and the number of responses that have come in, looks like that's going to be a January item versus a December item. So our December meeting will be virtually, and then we'll meet again in person in January. But that's all I have.
Good. Any questions for the chair? All right, stand by, Joe. Thank you. We've got minutes to take a look at and approve or modify.
So moved, Anderson.
Second, Gotel.
All right, we got a motion and a second to approve the minutes of October 16, 2024 for the Transportation Advisory Board. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the minutes of the meeting of October 16, 2024 for the tab, say aye.
Aye.
Sorry, Beck.
Correction on the date, October 15th, 2025, not 24 and not the 16th.
All right, 2025, yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Keep me in the current year, yeah. See, the agenda is messed up. Thanks for that. So approval of the minutes of October 16, 2025. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thanks for that catch. Now, we've got some consent items that Chair MacPherson is going to come up and handle in one fell swoop, and then we'll get into the things that require action on our part, which is about 8 items today. So let's take on those consent agenda items first. Chair MacPherson, welcome back.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll run through these relatively quickly. Feel free to ask any questions as necessary. So the first item, 2025-38, is a Streamlined tip amendment. Southwest Transit received FTA, I want to make sure I say this right, FTA bus and low and no emission grant program funds to rehabilitate the Southwest station. That's their park and ride station. Not only does that include improvements for riders as far as ADA and safety improvements, but also for their maintenance facility for their workers. So security and safety updates. So with that one, it was, again, it's not regional solicitation funding, it's FTA funds. So the TAC was unanimously supportive of this item. The next item, which was, or is.
39.
Yep, number 39. So this one is a Streamlined tip amendment for the City of St. Paul and City of Minneapolis bicycle and pedestrian projects. This is a amendment, let's see. The first one here is a scope adjustment for Minneapolis, 21st Avenue South bicycle and pedestrian project. That one there, the prices are a little higher. The price difference will be covered with local funds. So no additional federal funds on that one. And the City of St. Paul, there's a price adjustment there as well with the scope change, and that's related to some additional signal improvements that will be associated with this pedestrian project. So,
all right.
Both of those, again, were unanimously approved by TAC.
Okay.
And then the third one here, got a lot of papers here, which is 2025-40. This is the addition of, or amendment to, let's see, to adjust the scope and cost of 3 projects for MnDOT, the Snelling Avenue Mill and Overlay from Highway 36 in Roseville to Gray Fox Road in Arden Hills. There's a Cedar Avenue unbonded concrete overlay from 138th Street, also known as Highway 23, to Dakota-Hennepin County line in Apple Valley. And then there's also the Highway 169 concrete pavement repair. That one is changing, the scope is changing from a concrete repair to a bituminous pavement rehabilitation project. And so we did have some questions on that. Sheila, do you have any additional information on that one? It's pretty substantial scope change there from a concrete project to a bituminous overlay. Unless Molly's here and wants to add anything on that. Maybe worth just speaking to that one a little bit. As you guys can all imagine, a concrete repair project to a bituminous overlay project is something completely different.
Thanks, Chair Hovland and TAB members. I'm Molly McCartney. I work at Minnesota Department of Transportation Metro District, and I support our TAB member, Sheila Kalpe, on the TAC as well. So this project is changing a pretty significant scope for the pavement materials to stay within budget. So we know it's a change from kind of a long-term pavement fix to a shorter term, but our materials engineer believe that would be the best way to pursue the fix
All right, good. Thank you for that.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, that completes those 3 items.
Okay, let me see if any of our colleagues on the tab wish to remove 2025, 38, or 39, or 40 from the consent agenda. Hearing nothing, is there a motion to adopt 2025, 38, 39, and 40 in a single motion?
So move, John.
Need a second?
Second, Anderson.
All right. Motion and a second to adopt the items on the consent agenda in a single motion, 2025-38, 39, and 40. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of those items on the consent agenda in a single motion, say aye. 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 Opposed? Carried. All right, very good. Now we get into the heart of the meeting, and we're going to start out with an HSIP matter, which is 2025-30, which is a scope change in Carver County.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair and members. So this one here relates to a highway safety improvement program project with Carver County. They received HSIP dollars for that project in the amount of $2 million. As they move forward with project design and development, they've quickly realized that there's a number of impacts to the project. Some of them are associated to cultural and environmental elements north of the Bevins Creek Bridge. And I believe in your handout, you have a map of the project. So on the north end, just north of that Bevins Creek Bridge, that's the area that we're talking about today. Typically with these HSIP projects, you're trying to address safety issues. And during our discussion with this candidate and the project champion here, we asked if removing that section of the roadway would be a detriment to the overall safety improvements associated with the project. And they said no, it's really a corridor improvement project. The problem is some of these hurdles that they're running into are so significant that if they were to try to continue moving forward with this federal project, it would halt the entire project. So their request again is to remove that section north of the bridge. And it's not only related to those impacts, both environmentally, but also to some of the neighboring properties with their drain fields and driveways. But additionally, there's also several proposals that are in the works right now for, if I heard them correctly, I believe it was upwards of 1,500 to 2,000 lots in that area. So new housing developments that are coming to fruition here in the next 5 years. Originally, they expected to be about 10 years out, but they're moving quicker than that. So with that, there's a potential realignment of that north section as well. So both funding and programming and TAC were supportive of this request and recommended it for approval.
I think one of the issues we talked about was whether it should remain fully funded, because it was a reduction in scope in terms of the 20% reduction in scope, I think. So
Yeah, that's
you want
correct.
to walk through that, why people thought it should be fully funded?
Yeah, great point, Mr. Chair. So similar to a recent project that came through in the transit category, which had a significant scope change, we know that those are two different animals to deal with in the first place, but that one there, they ran into ridership changes and a number of other issues that they were working through. So they significantly changed that scope, and that one was approved based on those features. Similarly, in this case, these changes here in this request is really not due to the applicant not being willing to move forward with the project. It relates to those environmental impacts, relates to the impacts of the neighboring property, the forward thinking of why put in an improvement if it's going to be ripped up in the next 5 to 10 years? It really doesn't make sense. If they're going to realign that roadway to promote additional improvements and development in the area, let's just withhold doing any major projects there. Additionally, like I said earlier, the intent of the project was for safety, and so a lot of those corridor safety improvements will still be realized with the work that they're going to do. So barring all of that and realizing also that the project is not fully funded, it's not fully funded up to 80%, you can still facilitate applying all $2 million to this project. And so that's really some more of the background why TAC supported that.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Any questions for Chair MacPherson on 2025-30? This is it.
I'll move it.
All right. Commissioner Gattel moves the adoption of 2025-30 in its recommended form. Is there a second?
Second.
Mayor?
Yeah, second.
Okay. All right, we got a motion and a second to adopt 2025-30 in its recommended form. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adopting 2025-30 in its recommended motion form, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. The 2025-30 is adopted. Next is 2025-37.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So in concert with all the work that's ongoing with the revamp of the regional solicitation, as the regional solicitation approaches, there's other plans and documents that are in place that a lot of times need to be looked at or revamped. One of those documents is on the pedestrian side or the bicycle route side, you've got the regional bicycle barriers document that's out there. And then also you have the regional bicycle transportation network map. And so in preparation of this new regional solicitation, Met Council staff had released an opportunity for local agencies and jurisdictions to update those documents with any changes on their system. And so as you can see in the action item here, there are a number of proposed changes. And that's what's before you in this item here. This item passed both the funding and programming and the technical advisory committee with no issues. It's really, this is all proposed by a lot of these technical folks and agencies. So barring any questions, there was unanimous support for moving this forward for public comment.
All right. Questions for Chair MacPherson on this matter? Yes, Glenn. Member Johnson.
This is less a question and just making sure everyone understands like what the impact is of changing these things. So this has come up repeatedly with the regional solicitation with the former bike and trail category that I think there was a perception, and I think it had a lot of reality that if you were not on the regional bike trail network, and you wouldn't get funded. So could you just talk a little bit about the impacts of this change and what that means for applicants going forward with the regional solicitation?
Yeah, I'll do my best here, and if I need any help, I'll bring up Steve or someone else. So in the bike or ped categories specifically, past regional solicitations have mentioned that if you're not on that list, if your route is not on that document, you either score less or you get 0 points in that category for that. And so that's a big impact for those agencies that are proposing projects. So this gives the agencies an opportunity to come in and modify that or add those routes to the plan. There's a lot of work behind the scenes beyond that as well. You've got park plans and those types of things as well, but that's really where it comes down to is, like you said, there's a perception that if you're not on these documents, as you go through the regional solicitation, you're not funded or you won't score well in that category or measure. Steve, did I miss anything on that?
No, did a good job. This doesn't weigh into the active transportation funding at all, and you know that. But it is proposed to be a qualifying requirement for the regional solicitation, the regional bikeways category. So you either need to be on one of these networks, RBTN, Regional Bicycle Transportation Network, bike barriers, or a council-approved regional trail. So those are the three regional networks you need to be on for the regional bike facilities category. So that's qualifying requirement and a scoring measure, but only for the federal funds.
Thanks, Steve.
Good. Thank you. Any other questions for Chair MacPherson? Member Johnson, you care to move the matter?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Second by Member Workman, Commissioner Workman. All right. We got a motion and a second on 2025-37. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of 2025-37 in this recommended form, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. 2025-37 is adopted. Then we move on to 2025-31. Let's see if I gave you two.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So now the fun stuff, what we've all waited for here.
Yep.
So we're going to get into the regional solicitation. And so this first item, there is a presentation you can follow along on the screen here. It was included in your packets as well. It does a nice job of summarizing each one of these action items. So the first one we're going to look at here is that 2025-31, the regional solicitation federal funding categories. And so for the sake of time, I'll try and take a high level look at this. You're right. But if we skip ahead one slide here, this is a good snapshot, a good infographic view of this. Essentially, if you look at the light gray or blue in the center of this, so that dynamic and resilient, looking back at the 2024 solicitation and previous ones, these look very similar other than the titles that you see in there. Very similar to past solicitations. So that core set of categories there was included. What we've worked on over the last 2 years on this revamp is we've added that one on the left, the safety category in red. And then we've also added the environment. And so the unique projects has disappeared. That's no longer part of this, but you do have the new environment. That is funding that would be set aside for a 2028 set of projects and applications. So that's what that category is for. And then on the bottom there, you got the regional modeling, travel behavior, inventory category down there. But these are the categories that came up and have been developed. If you've been following along with the policymaker work group or the technical advisory work group, the technical steering group, these are what came up. I'm trying to think. It's probably best to just open this up for questions if people have questions on these particular categories or any comments on this. But again, this action item is just talking about adopting these as the categories and subcategories within them.
All right, good, yeah, so we can certainly do that. For colleagues on the tab, are there questions of Chair MacPherson or comments maybe from some of the folks on the policymaker work group with regard to the work that was done to establish these categories? Anyone? Commissioner?
Mr. Chair, I'd move approval if there's no questions. There's not any big, huge changes here.
Yeah.
Anything, this was not the controversial part.
Yeah.
Let's just put it that way. I'll second.
All right, we got a motion and a second on 2025-31 in its recommended form establishing those 13 categories. Any further discussion? Yes, Member Zhang.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question about the safety one, proactive and reactive. May you just distinguish that from how or when this would be separate from both like the bike, transit, roadway, like type safety issues?
Oh, sure. Yeah, so great question. For those that didn't hear that, how would this differentiate from some of like the bike categories and the other categories? So some of those projects that you could apply for in those categories could spill over into these other categories. And that was discussed during this. So for example, if you have a bike safety project, it could fall within that regional bike facilities category as well, if you're trying to address a safety issue. The difference is the safety category is really set up to really dig into more of the safety aspects of that project. So if you've got a very specific safety concern, whether it's pedestrians being hit, high speeds along a regional route, that's where you can really focus in here. But you could have, hopefully this is answering your question, you could apply for a bike project in either or all three of those. So does that kind of answer where you were going with that?
And if I may, would there be any sort of like blending or braiding of it from those different sources for a project? Could they do that, or would agencies have to like apply specifically for each bucket?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, member, the intention.
I think it'd be helpful with
with
this construction noise next door, for you to restate the question would be a good one. Good thing.
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, members, the question was, could you blend funding from each of these different subcategories? The answer to that would be no. The recommendation would be you apply for one of them and you would only receive money from one of them. And so this particular regional solicitation year, I also want to point out the area here in light blue. So the local bike facilities, local pedestrian facilities, and active transportation planning. I should mention that is that regional metro transportation sales and use tax. The 5% that Met Council gets is what facilitates those categories. And so there's approximately 50 million that'll be available. We're also saying that a project you could apply for those as well, but Steve, did we land on whether or not you can apply for both the federal and the state, or not state, regional tax? It's one or the other, correct? Right. So you could only apply for one or the other. And that's coming out of that active transportation work group, as well as the other working groups. So you can't blend, but you do have options here for any particular project. That's a good question. That's come up a number of times.
Any follow on? Okay.
No, that's just helpful. And I would say I would just look forward to like continuing evaluating these. Yeah.
All right, very good. Thank you. Other questions for Chair MacPherson on this? Member Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just the actual follow-up to that. This is a question I asked in the policymaker group this morning, like say for a trail project, if there's two distinct segments, one could apply under a regional solicitation and one segment could apply under the active transportation. These have to be different projects.
Correct, yep.
Look
Good
to the
example.
expert to make sure I was right.
All right, thanks for that. Okay. Hearing nothing further, all those in favor of adoption of 2025-31 and its recommended form, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. 2025-31 is approved. And now we are on to the next matter, which is 2025-32.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm going to flash back to that infographic. That's probably the easiest way to look at it. But this is specifically for the active transportation fund solicitation categories. So this is, if I go back, it's going to be those light blue subcategories there. The local bike facilities, the local pedestrian facilities, and then the active transportation planning. One thing I'll note here is compliments to the active transportation working group. They had several really robust discussions about not only the projects themselves, but also the different communities that would be eligible to receive these funds and utilize these funds. Then in addition to that, there's a lot of communities out there that don't have the funding to even set up a project, potentially apply in one of these categories. So that bottom category there, the planning category, that would facilitate different agencies that don't have the funding to develop a project, work with their community members and actually do the planning study, figure out what the needs are. This would also facilitate that. So want to call attention to that. That's not necessarily an infrastructure subcategory, that is a planning category.
Good. And this was, I take it, non-controversial at the TAC?
Correct.
All right. All right. So any questions with regard to 2025-32? Is there a motion to adopt 2025-32?
So moved.
Karwoski.
Karwoski and Gattell seconds. Karwoski moves. All right, we got the motion and a second on 2025-32 adoption in its recommended form. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of 2025-32 in its recommended form, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. 2025-32 is adopted. And we're on to 2025-33.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is more the meat and potatoes of the discussion today. The policymaker work group met earlier today to discuss this as well. And then this particular action item is setting the minimum and maximum for each one of those subcategories in that table you just saw. So as you scroll through there, some of them didn't change. In many cases, the maximum changed to acknowledge inflation that's taken place over the last several years. We know that continues to go up, that doesn't stop. One other key element in here that I want to mention too is specific to the ABRT, or the Arterial Bus Rapid Transit. So if you remember back the last few solicitations, there has been a $25 million, essentially a set aside for that category for the ABRT expansion and the expansion of those services. Again, due to inflation, the request and proposals out there during the policymaker work group and other discussions was to increase that in a similar fashion to some of those min and max categories. This particular table did go to funding and programming. Originally, this table included that ABRT in there, and it was shown as having a 2026 min of 30 million, then the max was NA, so essentially no max. And the rationale for that was during the policymaker work groups, there was discussions about if there's additional money available, they would like to have the opportunity to apply more money to that category, that particular funding category. As that rolled into TAC, we had a very robust discussion about that. There were a number of different concerns and topics brought up with that, which resulted in this proposal. This was a modification from the funding and programming recommendation to adopt the table as it was. Again, where it included the 30 million as the min and no max. We recommended setting that out, pulling it into its own table, and showing it as you see it on the screen here before you. Based on a number of comments, some of those included concerns about if there's no max, could funding be pulled from the other categories such as roadways or bike and ped? There was concerns with that, which is part of that first part of that, where if all transit applications are funded and funding targets are met or close to met in all the other funding categories, you could award additional funding to ABRT. There were also concerns, because a lot of times the conversation comes up, some projects have a really low score. Are those worthy projects? Should those projects be funded? So there was concerns about that as well during the TAC conversation. I failed to mention that during the policymaker work group meeting, but that was another comment and issue that we wanted to try and resolve. So again, this particular comment here was added from TAC just to try and really hone in on the ability to apply more funding there, but also have some kind of upper and minimum and maximum here to ensure that it's not bleeding over into the other categories. So that's what's led to this. Now during the policymaker work group, there was a good robust discussion there, and there was some revised language that was proposed. And I'll turn it over here to Member Barber in 1 second. I do just want to flash back and maybe ask if there's any questions on this table first before we get into the ABRT. There weren't any questions from funding and programming or the technical advisory committee. I felt like this was pretty straightforward. It was mainly on the ABRT.
Any questions with regard to table 1?
Okay.
Minimum and maximum funding recommendations. The heart of the conversation was with regard to what was on the circulated action transmittal 25-33 with respect to table 2. And then we don't vote, but I think we reached a consensus on what the language should be that we propose to the full tab. And you should have a single page in front of you that was circulated that reflects the work of the policymaker work group this morning. And then Chair Barber will take you through that right now.
I will make sure that there's, if you have additional copies, please let them around so we can probably have some.
And Steve's going to pull this up on the screen as well.
All right, I'll start talking while we do this. So we did have a good conversation this morning at the regional solicitation work group when we were talking about the ABRT program and putting the $30 million as a minimum. The intention was to be able to continue to fund a big project, but then if there were other projects that really we didn't feel as a group met what we were looking for, additional money could go into the ABRT program. It was our intent all along that money stay within the transit category. Let's be clear, I don't know where that got missed somewhere along the road, but we never thought it was gonna be pulling from roads or bridges or anything. It was always gonna stay within the transit category. And so we do, as you look at the revised language, table 1 itself stays the same, but we would like to add second bullet is a $30 million minimum award to the arterial bus rapid transit funding category with the footnote, TAB can award additional funding to arterial BRT only within the transit funding target. So that part is very clear. And then we also wanted to add some clarifying language because if you look at the original action transmittal, the $5.8 million for TDM and also our work or the funding award for travel behavior inventory wasn't mentioned. So we also wanted to include this with this. So all of the funding package is on one page. So any questions?
Yeah, any questions on that? So this would be the revised document that we'd be working off of for potential voting purposes. Commissioner, do you have a question?
I was just gonna move it.
Okay.
I'll second.
Let's get a motion in a second, and then we'll go. All right, no. Commissioner Ulrich.
Well, the only thing, and I'm not speaking in opposition to this, but I wonder about the mechanics of how this might work, because we don't have a minimum funding, we've never had a minimum point funding category, saying if it's below a certain points, you don't get funded. The other has been so competitive that there are always ones below the funding line, but it isn't a stated, if you get below a certain points, you don't get funded. So it seems to me, how will this mechanically work if there's feeling that a project isn't worthy but it's still, it's kind of a subjective call there.
Chair Barber.
I believe during every regional solicitation, we look at the scores and we look at, we get those big spreadsheets that tell us where everything's landing. And we as a group talk about it and decide where the cutoff is. And that is what we've done in practice. We didn't have a mechanism before when we thought something probably would have been below a line, but it got funded anyhow. And that's what we're trying to avoid. And to give us some discretion. Is there some being subjective? It is all the time when we're doing this. We move those lines up and down, discussions around this table.
Well, the only thing I would say to that is we do that, yes, based on available money. In other words, that line gets moved up and down because that's the money in that category, and sometimes we've fudged on that line a little bit and figured out a way to get something funded that was, we over-programmed is the term, because we know that some projects are going to fall out by the time the money is going to be spent. So that's how we fudged on that lines, in the past. But that's because the line is drawn based on available funding in that category.
Yeah, Chair Barber, I'll comment too, but Chair
If
Barber.
I may, there have been times when we've made decisions around the table to skip a project to make sure another project got funded and we had geographic balance. So there is some discretion and subjective analysis as we do this.
Yeah, okay.
And Mr. Chair, just in the simplest terms, there's 60 million for transit. We're saying half of it goes to ABRT. There's 3 separate categories under transit. Then it allows us flexibility in that other 30 million to fund the other 2 categories, and if there's remainder. So in other words, we will be able to decide whether more money for BRT is more important than some of the lower scoring transit projects in the other 2 transit categories. So it allows us to prioritize the transit dollars to those projects that we deem most worthy.
It's a good practical explanation. Commissioner Ulrich.
I'm just curious, within the category, microtransit, how does that, would that compare head-to-head towards the more traditional transit projects in scoring, do you think? In other words, at some point, should we be looking at a sort of a protected category of microtransit and that's not going head-to-head against an ABRT or another transit project? How do they score?
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, member, Steve, can you pull back up the presentation there? So the microtransit would not compete against, there you go. He's got it.
Ready.
Yeah.
The wizard behind the scene. All right, so let me go back a few. So in the transit category, so you've got the transit expansion, including the microtransit, so you can include it in that category. It would compete in there, and it would not compete against the ABRT.
Yeah, I figured that out, but I guess want to further understand how microtransit competes against transit expansion. In other words, in points. In other words, that's a new emerging, whether you're the urban core or outside the urban core, that's an emerging, growing category, and I'm just wondering how it competes scoring generally with other transit.
Yeah. I could turn it over to my council staff.
Well, Mr. Chair?
I'll phone a friend.
We could go down to rabbit holes, but when we get to the scoring things and the points and everything, that's probably when we'll be able to have those kinds of discussions.
I think the question you're also raising is, it's akin to something that's happened every solicitation. We start on this revision path and thinking about different categories that might be important to address, and microtransit could be one that's an emerging sort of category that we want to address in the next solicitation, but it's kind of the 11th hour to be talking about.
Yeah, but I'm just trying to understand, because we're still saying what's not a worthy project. I wonder if microtransit becomes not worthy, and,
Yeah, I can offer a pretty simple response just to move the conversation along. We do actually have a new criteria in transit expansion called coverage. And so it's meant to give some balance to not just focusing on new riders, but new areas that are covered for transit. That'll probably benefit microtransit applications. Just a reminder that we have actually funded, I think, 2 or 3 microtransit applications recently. So they have been competing fairly well, even under the past structure, but they should be able to compete fairly well under the revised structure. And that was all talked about at the technical working group that talked about transit. So I think there's pretty confident that microtransit will be able to compete.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Chair.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'll just add to, so going back to the narrative that was in the proposed action item, where it mentioned if all the other funding category applications were, or transit applications were funded, what we were trying to get at there as a TAC is to try and ensure that those service delivery agencies like MVT, Southwest Transit, they don't have ABRT projects in the works as of today, but they could in the future. We wanted to ensure that those projects were also seen as important. And so that's another impetus for the language that TAC came up with making sure that all those projects were funded. I know I mentioned that earlier, but just wanted to reiterate that. That was some of the impetus for what I said earlier and what that language was. I think to Member Barber's point, what she's saying is within your guys' discretion, you guys will work through that, and you guys will work through that discussion and arm wrestling match.
We do that anyway.
Mr. Chair?
No.
Exactly.
No,
I would just quickly say, I think it's our discretion, but also the scoring. So will help us work through how the other 30 million are distributed. And so I just want to confirm for everybody that what we're voting on is the one that was handed out.
yeah, we call it revised 2025-33. Single-page document is what we're working off of. That was what was moved and what was seconded. And then I would just opine to and support, I think, what's been said by Commissioner Holberg and yourself, Chair, that when years ago when I was first on the tab, everything was done on a scoring basis. The judgment of the tab didn't enter into anything. And so over time, we've allowed ourselves the latitude to be able to do the things that, the reason we're here is to make judgments on things and make decisions on things that are important to be making decisions on relative to the regional transportation system. So we've given ourselves the latitude to be able to do that in the way we're scoring now. And this is a good example, I think, that who you expressed as to how, when it gets down to the end, we can make some decisions collectively on how we want to spend those funds that might remain in a particular category. Okay. We got any more discussion on 2025-33? All those in favor of adoption of revised, what I'll call revised 2020. Oh, yes.
Excuse me. I have
Cashman, go ahead.
The last part, which is the TDM spending at $750,000. I was wondering if there was discussion in the policymaker work group about raising that up to $1 million in order to account for some flexibility around certain I like how it starts around 100,000, but raising it up to $1 million might accommodate some more flexibility around emerging projects in that category. Was that up for discussion?
Yeah. Well, we got a motion and a second on the table, but it's open for discussion. We can have a discussion. You could posit it in the form of an amendment.
Yeah, I would move to amend that to raise it up to $1 million.
All right. Is there a second? Fails for lack of a second.
Sorry, I'll second that.
You'll second it? All right. Okay, now we're open for discussion on the proposed amendment. Go ahead, Member Coleman.
Yeah, thank you. This is very timely. I was hoping, and I'm sorry, I apologize for my confusion because I was planning to move this on item 7, but did want to ask the body and our staff for consideration of additional funding in the TDM category to support car share programs specifically. It's become an increasingly important and relied upon service in our core cities. It's in the process of expanding along the Gold Line into Washington County. It has been an enormously successful program. We have the biggest electric car share program in the country, the most successful, with each vehicle being used for about 3 trips each day. It's a proven method for reducing overall travel demand. The availability of the service reduces the need for car ownership, making it complementary to transit and other modes of travel, reduces overall vehicle miles traveled by reducing the number of privately owned cars, and it makes transportation much more affordable for thousands of Twin Cities residents who can avoid buying a car, given that the cost of car ownership is higher than ever. We know that TAB has supported car share capital costs for the past 3 regional solicitation cycles, so it's a familiar and proven program that has been strained recently by a sudden uptick in insurance costs. So support for this category would be for outreach and engagement activities that could promote the use of car share. So I was hoping to ask that staff might be able to take a look at options for TAB to consider adding ongoing support for car sharing services, like Our Car, to the base budget of the TDM program. So I think, but you know, if the motion is on the table to increase the funding directly, would also support that.
Funded $4 million under the.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, in sequence here, Commissioner Karwoski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would support the increase. I think it's showing indication of expanding the car share into the suburban counties. The first opportunity is the goal line, and it's proven that car share is being used more. I'm really hopeful that it being expanded out to the metro counties. This is a start. It's not a big increase, and I really think it's a key to, like the goal line in my mind's off to a good start. These kind of add-ons with our, we have bus rapid transit. As an example, there'll be a car, could be a car that's talked about actually in Maplewood at the Ramsey County site. Perhaps in Newport, we have an area that's low income where there's a car shortage. So this really not only helps people get the mobility, it helps our transit lines. And there's indication that this program has the possibility to move out to the suburban counties.
All right, Member Martinson. No, nothing? Okay.
I'm sure.
I had you on the list here. Member Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'm generally supportive of this. I just had maybe a couple follow-up questions about sort of the history of this. I know we haven't had a huge number of car share applications that have come through, and I think the last one was in unique projects, which of course, unique, you know. Do we have a sense of how much the last applications have been? I mean, is the million just something we need to do in order to accommodate that, or kind of what's the history so far? And then I have a follow-up after that too.
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, member, one thing I want to add in there and then try and answer your question, I'll call Cole up here or Steve to answer your question. One thing to note is the funding that's available for this mechanism is $1.2 million right now. So when you look at that 750, that would allow, you know, potentially almost 2 fully funded projects versus if you went to $1 million, if one project took it all, there would be $200,000 left for the second project. So I think that might be some of the background on where that 750 came from, but Cole or Steve, you want to answer anything about
Well, Mr. Chair,
the other item?
I mean, that's why I'm confused. This is just what each grant could get, the range. So basically what your motion does is would reduce the number of grants under this category. So I mean, later on, we'll talk about how much money is going to be in each of the boxes. Right now, this is just when you apply for a grant, that's the top dollar amount of the grant application. It's not relative to the amount of funding available in each box.
Were you thinking it was a total funding category amount, or were you thinking of per project?
Per project, and of course, it doesn't have to go all the way up because it starts down at 100,000.
Okay.
So even multiple projects at 100,000 could create that amount and doesn't lock in a certain amount of projects that can be approved under that category. It just creates the opportunity for some bigger projects to apply in that category.
And Member Coleman, were you supportive of that notion that it raises the amount per project in the category?
Yes.
On the maximum side? Okay, thanks for that. We've got a few more folks that wanted to speak to this issue. Member Vaughn?
Mr. Chair?
No?
Did you want us to answer his question first? Again, a little bit?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, so I can, just speaking about the history, and maybe just a reminder too, that the proposal and the targets, which is, as Member Coleman noted, next action, that increase from 7 to 8 million, that will increase the competitive pot from 1.2 to 2.2 million. Those will actually be selected in the 2028 solicitation. So we're only working with 1.2 million this cycle because that was set aside 2 years ago. So just a reminder, this next cycle is smaller because it's an advanced thing. The last cycle, I think most of our applications were around 2 to 400 million. The maximum was 500. I think we got one application that was maybe 500,000. Sorry, I said million. And so they are generally in that $200,000 to $400,000 or $500,000 range for applicants based on the history of this program.
So are you concerned about raising the maximum to $1 million?
Yeah, I would just reiterate what the TAC chair said. The technical working group discussed it. I think they were concerned about it taking up too much of the pot in this one category for one project potentially.
All right. Thanks for that. Member Holberg, anything
No,
further?
I think we're ready to vote, I'm guessing, but.
Let's, Russ Stark, you want to come up and tell us a little bit more about the hour car thing that you're concerned about? I know I get an email from you or.
Former tab member?
Yeah, former tab member.
Mr. Chair, members, it's been a while. Good to be back. Russ Stark with the City of St. Paul for another 6 weeks or so. Happy to address the question. There's been some pretty big changes in the realm of the local car share programs in terms of certain sources of federal funding being cut off. In fact, we had a grant terminated by the current administration that was going to help us expand the program on the east side of St. Paul. In addition, the insurance costs have skyrocketed as insurance is just in a weird place these days. And as a result, we're really working hard at the City of St. Paul, our friends at the City of Minneapolis, and other partners, including Washington County, to try to figure out a strategy to kind of stabilize the ongoing operations of the system. So that's what's going on. The program is wildly successful from a user perspective. And is proving very popular, thousands upon thousands of users here in the core city. So appreciate the opportunity to just address you briefly and happy to answer other questions that may come up.
Yep. Any questions for former tab member Stark? Yeah, go ahead,
I'm sorry,
Member
I don't have
Foster.
a question. I don't have a question for you.
Just a comment?
Yeah,
Okay.
wouldn't, or maybe it does relate to what you were saying, I'm not sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm supportive of more funding for our car. I can't drive. I've used it with friends to get around, like the last mile sort of transit out to get to Costco when the Borealis is down, and I need to take a car home, things like that. Maybe I'm misunderstanding something, but it feels like this should actually be in item 7 and not in, this should be, this motion should be brought up in item 7 and not this. If someone can help me understand that, I would move to cancel this motion and then bring it up again when we get to item 7.
Well, you just vote it down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we got a motion in a
Or
second.
withdraw it and bring it up at 7.
Got it. Right, thank you.
Or,
No.
Mr. Chair, just to that point that Member Foster brought up, or wouldn't you want to increase it and then also make that amendment again for number 7, right? Because we're just setting the max. We don't know what type of projects we're getting in, but if you want to increase that funding for it, then you would have to make that amendment also in number 7.
We can address it when we get to 7, but the question now is whether or not to raise the maximum on TDM.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner.
and if it was almost any other category, that probably works. But for my understanding is this particular category is already set at 1.2 million max dollars because it was a remnant from a prior funding stream for these purposes. And then the next big solicitation under the green boxes is going to come in 28. And so if in fact you wanted to put more money into the green boxes for 26, it would have to come from other sources, is that right? Which we historically have not done.
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, member and other members, so again, one thing that gets confusing is this min and max is actually set up for the 2028 solicitation. Because these funds the funds we're talking about now would be applied for in 2028. So the money we're working on now is actually from the 2024 solicitation, which is that 1.2 million that's left over. And was there a min and max on that at the time that we're working under for that? Maybe to answer these questions.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. So the proposal of the 750,000 would go into effect this cycle. So even though it's old money essentially, it would still be 750,000
for 26.
Yep, for 2026. The motion I think on the table is to move it up to $1 million, and that would go into effect for this cycle, 2026.
Okay, good correction.
So
Thank you.
if I could to clarify, If your intent was to have bigger projects within the 1.2 million, then it should stay here. If your intent was to put more money into, then it should go to agenda item number 7, but there really isn't more money to put in because the number for 26 was already set.
Right. My intention is correct about it being for this item to raise the maximum.
Okay.
2 million.
All right.
Because there's not more funding to put in.
All right. And I think you've explained it well, Commissioner. Somebody else? Member Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to outline actually the definition of travel demand management because the discussion of EV car share does not really fit into that. It's not funding operations. It is not funding things like insurance. Travel demand management describes a wide range of strategies that support the most efficient use of transportation system by making personal travel options more flexible, clear, or convenient. And so it is really kind of putting out the information to get people into different modes and that type of structure, not an operational piece of things. So I feel like there's two different conversations going on here and they're not aligning. So I will not be voting for this. I think it's definitely out of sync and not necessarily in what TDM actually is.
Yep.
Let's vote.
Member Cashman.
Mr. Chair, what does car share and bike share fall under then?
So, Mr. Chair, member, I believe would that fall under transit expansion? No? I'm not the transit expert here, so I'll rely on these guys.
So as it's proposed, and the travel demand management would be for marketing-related activities for car share. They could be, it wouldn't be for actual car share. That was funded out of what used to be unique projects. That's not in the current proposal. But the one connection to car sharing was they could apply for marketing-related activities. That would be travel demand management under the structure.
So would it fit in any of them? What she's asking, would it fit in any of these categories?
So an example of that is the work that the 494 Corridor Commission does. It's all around marketing the ability to ride share some form or fashion, van pooling, carpooling. Has nothing to do with
infrastructure.
What Member Cashman's concerned about.
Right, the purchase of actual vehicles, like we've done in the past with unique projects, would not be eligible under the travel demand management piece.
I think what I'm hearing is that it doesn't squarely fall into TDM, but it doesn't squarely fall into any of the categories. And if we're really going to try to encourage this type of travel behavior with car share and bike share at a regional scale, then we need to be finding ways to include it. And that's what my motion is for.
Mr. Chair. So that will come in the next round. So this is kind of like the skeleton, okay? The amount of money and the categories. Then we are going to look like at scoring criteria. We can take your feedback of if we were interested in doing car share, where could they go, and if we had to amend or whatever, but I'm just not, I understand what you're trying to accomplish. I just don't think this is gonna work.
Yeah, it's not in this category, and there's insufficient funding is what I'm hearing in this category. It's just a misalignment. We're talking apples and oranges here. What you're proposing to do doesn't fit in this category.
Where does it fit, Mr. Chair?
That's the question you asked Steve.
You're asking what, the question was, where does it fit?
Yeah.
Yeah, the car sharing, expansion of and leasing or purchase of vehicles doesn't fit as proposed. I think the commentary was correct that if you want to make it eligible, you would have to direct us to put it somewhere and make it an eligible item. So that's a January action in front of TAB, the eligibilities and what's in the categories.
We used to have a unique category that it went into. We don't have that unique category being recommended anymore. So this will be a discussion for January. So to include.
Mr. Chair, we've asked our technical advisory committee to provide feedback on a number of things moving forward. We could tell Joe to add that to the list on the advisability of grants for expansion I mean, I think expansion is one thing. I think what you'll hear back, just operating a car share is probably two different things, and the group will have to decide. First of all, the TAC group will have to tell us if it's even allowed under these funding streams, number one. But number two, whether there's consensus around funding it and then where it should fall in the category. So it's a good point, good time to bring it up, but today I don't think we are able to address it in any way, shape, or form.
I think, Mr. Chair, with the larger increase.
If you can pull that microphone over, the noise from here is unbelievable.
I think the intention wasn't to necessarily direct and create all this work happening today. It's just to increase the category to create some more flexibility within that category for this to take place in the future.
All right, we got an amendment on the table suggesting that we raise the TDM environment grouping maximum to $1 million from $750,000. We've heard the discussion around that. Are people ready to vote on that, on the amendment? All right. Remember, yeah, we still got some people who want to speak, I guess. You had Johnson first?
Yep.
Member Johnson?
Thank you. And that is very loud. So thank you, Chair. As we scream today at each other, I think, I really misunderstood sort of, not the motion itself, but just sort of this underlying piece, because I remember having conversations, and I would defer to, all of our members of the active transportation work group, that bike share and car share were going to be included under the environment category. It was called something different at the time, but I remember having conversations that we were not going to talk about bike share within our pot of money because it was going to be covered with regional money with the regional solicitation. So, I guess I sort of need to hear more about this, but, again, I'm sort of confused because those categories seem to have just disappeared as where they're going to be funded, to Member Cashman's point. So, yeah, I want more information about that particular one to make sure we're all on the same page about what's included in each of these categories. I think we're pretty understanding of safety, dynamic, and resilient because those are the old modes, but I think environment is the one where it's really tough to envision what's in there. So I would like more conversation. But I will say this, whatever happens with this particular motion, this is only approving it for public comment. It's still coming back to tab for follow-up. So if we hear things and learn more, we could certainly make changes at that point as well. So I think this is a good conversation unearthing things, but this isn't, we're done today. We can still come back to things. But I just want to put that out for bike share and car share. I had a very different understanding of how those are going to be funded in this solicitation. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Member Johnson. Member Lindeke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just was reminded of what Member Ulrich was saying earlier about micro-transit, just to make it messy here. I think that car share, like the EV and Our Car programs, reminds me most of micro-transit in that it's solving that last mile problem and serving in communities like in suburban places like the Gold Line where you can't run fixed route service. So I would say, thinking down the line, treat these as similar kinds of infrastructure where you're going outside of fixed route transit and doing something else. We can talk about that later, for sure.
All right, thank you, Member Lindeke. Member Coleman.
Thank you. I also usually make it a practice not to talk in my first meetings of anybody, so apologies for talking a lot today. But I just want to, so it sounds like there are a lot of questions that need to be answered. At a minimum, though, under the current working understanding of the TDM category, it does allow for outreach, engagement, et cetera, related to car share. So even if nothing were to change, although as Member Johnson said, it seems like there's a big opportunity to change more, there's still the possibility to utilize this funding and potentially in larger amounts in order to support kind of these last mile options, including car share. So I think that there's, while it seems like there's quite a bit more work to be done, there is a direct nexus to car share through the education and outreach as it currently stands. So I'll support this motion, but also I will raise, and I think sort of the question about if it's possible to allocate more funding can be brought back up in number 7.
Commissioner.
Member Holberg, I think, really defined this well, and other members too. And I won't support the modification to this TDM on this one. I think what I'm hearing is I agree with Member Johnson that working with our staff that belongs to TAC, because that made me environment here on item 35, it could go in there, but if the good faith of this board is to address it properly in January, I'm content with that. I'm certainly supportive of finding a way to support car share expansion, but I'm worried that if I won't support this regarding 33, because I don't think it's the right category, and I'm worried it's really going to fail. I'd rather keep the good faith going for a better discussion of it in January.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. We've had a couple issues raised here in the context of this meeting that give us all pause for consideration. I think the micro-transit issue, the hour car, other things that we used to have in the unique projects category that's just kind of disappeared as we've done this work in the policymaker work group. So as we go forward, we'll have to be thinking about this as we get to the next stage. So anything else on this particular matter? Yes,
Yeah, I'd like to call a question, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I was just going to go there. All right, we've got an amendment to 2025-33, which would propose raising the maximum amount from $750,000 to $1 million in the environmental TDM category. All those in favor of that adoption of that amendment to raise that maximum amount by $250,000, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion fails. The amendment fails. Now back to the main motion, which is the revised 2025-33, which you've had in front of you.
Yep.
Any further discussion there? All right. All those in favor of adoption of revised 2025-33, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Revised 2025-33 carries. It's adopted. All right. Now we're on to 34, which is the minimum and maximum on active transportation.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, the Active Transportation Work Group did a lot of work on this. And so with that, the proposal here is that the local bike facility and local pedestrian facilities, which used to be federal application categories or subcategories, they've moved into this new metro area regional sales tax area. So it's funded with regional sales tax versus federal funds. These are the proposed minimums and maximums for each one of those categories. And then the local active transportation planning subcategory, again, that's new. I think that's a worthy one that's been discussed at great length within that group. And so that one has really no minimum, but a maximum of 200,000. Where that maximum came from, just listening to the conversation and understanding of kind of the background on that. These smaller communities that are going to propose a project, typical consultant contracts, if they were to hire someone, would be in that anywhere from 50 to 150. If it's a larger study, I know just from my past experience, you'd be approaching that 200,000, but that's going to go a long way to funding a lot of good studies for our small community members.
I'll move it, Mr. Chair.
Second, John.
All right, we've got a motion and a second on 2025-34 at the, in the terms of the recommendation. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of 2025-34 in its recommended form, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. 2025-34 is adopted. 2025-35, which is the regional solicitation modal funding targets.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, this is another item that was talked about many times over the past 2 years, especially the last year here. You know, if you look in the past, when you looked at the different funding categories, a lot of times we were looking at ranges for funding. So if we knew there was 180 million coming, the range for, let's say, the bike pedestrian facilities was in that 9 to 20% range or whatever it was at that time. That's what applicants were looking at as we were developing this process and talking about it with the policymaker work group and the regional solicitation steering group. The discussion really centered around, and the proposal was, if you would give us a target, it really helps the applicants and where they're going to focus their energy and so forth. So that's what's on the screen before you today, is instead of showing that range, the percentage range, you would be showing that target percentage. And then you would go with, and that equates to a dollar amount based on what the expected federal funds will be available for 2026. So that's how we got here. That's a real short, abbreviated version of it. If we want to get more into the details, we can always call staff up here, but that's what you have before you. The percentages have shifted a little bit. Originally, safety was at 10%, roadway was a little higher, and so the percentages have shifted over the course of time here, and this is where things have ended up.
I think between the technical people and the policymakers, there's been a little shift in there, but these are
correct.
These are the percentages that we're settled in on. So does anybody on the tab have questions for the chair on the particular ranges here or percentage allocations? Okay, is there a motion to adopt 2025-35?
So moved. Jepson.
Excuse me.
Second, Goodell.
All right, we got a motion and a second. We've got a question from Member Coleman.
Thank you, and sorry, this isn't a question, this is a question for the body, I guess. So if, to the previous conversation on item number 5, if item number 7 is the correct place to bring this up, the possibility of allocating more funding to the environment category, recognizing that we still have some questions about what might ultimately fall under the environment category, but if there were an option to work with staff to bring back some options about potentially adding some funding. I mean, even just looking at these numbers, seeing that it's quite a bit lower than where other categories are, and that there might, even from what we've learned in the last few minutes, be additional solicitations that are coming through this category if that's where we're to add sort of the micro-transit last mile options. Then I'm trying to figure out if this is a motion or a question. But I think that would be my ask, is if that would be possible to look into potentially increasing funding for this while we work to address these questions around what would eventually fall in there.
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, member, I'll take a stab at that question here. So again, these are just target percentages. Instead of using ranges, we're using a target percentage. By no means does this handcuff tab into how much money to allocate to each one of these categories. So for instance, right now we've got 6% on the environmental category. If after all the applications come in, the scoring is done, and it's determined what those funding lines are, wherever they line up, if all of a sudden there's 7.5% available for environmental, it's a possibility that that's what it could be, and that could be that set aside in the future. Unless I'm speaking wrong, but that's essentially where it could end up. TAB still has that ability to make that decision. This does not handcuff it.
Commissioner?
Yeah, and so I think what the struggle here is that as a member of a lot of working groups, if you will just let us take the car share issue back to TAC and the working group and figure out where it makes sense to change dollar amounts today when we don't, it may make sense to make car share projects eligible under the transit expansion category. I mean, there might be a more, a home with more synergy in another funding category, but today, just on the fly trying to do this could actually be counterproductive to your goal and the amount of money that might be available to your cause. So I would just really respectfully say, let us get through what we kind of refer to the skeleton of the program. And as we work through criteria for funding, points, what goes where, you've raised an issue that needs to be addressed. We have said we would do that. Allow us time to do it, please.
Other questions or comments? Member Martinson.
Mr. Chair.
Member Martinson, then Member Zhang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to build on what Member Holberg has offered to say, in addition to, and I think this is also what Member Lindeke was sort of getting at too, is that it's entirely possible for us to conceive of car share as a transit expansion modality. Yeah. It's also, I would argue, we've got, the active transportation work group has got a list of projects that don't neatly fit into how we currently have that all structured. One of those is, in fact, a regional bike share program, which I think could also possibly be conceptualized as a transit expansion project. Now, there may be other challenges that might prevent that, but I think I want to have that conversation, and I want to have the conversation about the car share's potential transit expansion as well. So I'm supportive of, as long as we just don't drop it, right? Let's set it aside for now, get this put in place. And again, I think I appreciate Mr. Kosachar's sorry, did I get it right?
Chair MacPherson, yeah.
Sorry, I'm
Or
sorry.
Joe, that's all right.
Too many Joes, too many Joes. I have too many Brians in my life.
If I screw up, it's Barbeau, if it's
It's never Whiting though, right? And again, I appreciated Joe's comments about these being targets, not handcuffs, right? So depending on what projects come in and how they score, we may move money in a little bit different ways. So that's it.
Thank you, Member Martinson. Member Zhang.
Mr. Chair, I was just wondering about timing or timeline, just since like this has resulted in a bigger conversation about the action that we're taking here. Is it needed for today, or may it be moved to the next meeting?
I think to keep on our schedule that we're told we need to be on from a staff standpoint, we need to make a decision on this today.
Yeah. Yeah, Mr. Chair, member, I would say that, like the chair mentioned, it's really to kind of keep this on target, because our next meeting in January, when we start talking about the applications, as we can already tell from the discussion today, that's going to be a robust conversation. We might need 17 hours here. Bring our sleeping bags and, popcorn, but no, I think if we keep this on track, we'd prefer to have the action taken today. Again, these are just targets. I will add that during the funding and programming meeting and the TAC meeting, there was one no vote, and that was from our MPCA representative. Fully understand that from their perspective, the 6% was low. We did talk about the fact that in these other subcategories and funding categories, there are environmental elements with that, and they acknowledge that, but I just wanted to share that with the group that was acknowledged. Ultimately was approved, but wanted to share that.
Okay, yeah. Well, a lot of work has gone into this already, so any other questions, comments? We got a motion and a second on 2025-35 approval in its recommended form. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of 2025-35 in its amended form say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. 2025-35 is adopted, and now we are at 2025-36.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So as of right now, what we're looking at is the proposal from the Active Transportation Work Group was to use the money that's been building up since the inception of that new 2023 transportation mechanism, which is that Metro Area Regional Transportation Sales Tax. And so the plan is to use the money that's been amassed through 2026 here. The target on that is approximately $50 million. And then with a sub-target of $2 million for those planning efforts. So again, if you think back to what the max was for the planning efforts, you could go up to $200,000 on your request. That would fund 10 planning efforts. So in most cases, it's going to come in much less than that, so we could get a lot of communities further down the road. But other than that, the pretty simple item here, there was no controversy or conversation at funding and programming or TAC.
Okay.
I'll move it, Mr. Chair.
We got a motion. Is there a second?
Second, no.
Okay. Let's go to, I want to go to Chair Johnson, see if he has any supplemental comment he wants to make.
Yeah, I also agree that this was uncontroversial, which is nice as our action items today. The one thing I will say, though, is that 50 million is going to be the high point for this money coming in. We've been only bringing in, the original estimate was about $24 million a year in sales tax revenue. It's been below that, so instead we're bringing in about 20 to 21. So we would expect in the 28th solicitation that this will be below 50 million. But the one thing we did want to consider is the money is very different than the federal money, where we're expecting years ahead where we're finally going to be spending it. This is something where if we approve it in 26, an applicant could start construction in 27. So having this money go out the door is a really important piece to this, and that was part of our consideration. So we can do that. So why not, get this money out there? And then the other one being, if this money is sitting in an account, it looks very tempting to take for other purposes. We want to be careful about that. We want to show that it's in use. So that's our intent behind this. Spend it up to basically the maximum we can with that little bit of reserve beyond that we're keeping separate.
Any other questions for the chair of our working group on active transportation or for our TAC chair?
I just have a comment.
Commissioner.
I just want to say a comment because in several of these now, this is some real improvement, I think, in putting planning dollars in here. One of the things we talked about is smaller jurisdictions trying to have access. And one of the access points was them not being able to have the staff time to do some of these plannings and to need for consultants. And I'm sure we might uncover other things as we move through this process, but this is a step in the right direction. And I really applaud everyone here around the table and to our TAC folks and all our subcommittees who help out with this.
Thanks, Commissioner. All right. Hearing nothing further, all those in favor of adopting 2025-36 in its recommended form, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Matter carries. It's approved. 2025-36 is approved and adopted. That completes our action items. Thank you, everybody, for that good conversation and good work. And we've got one item on the agenda from an informational standpoint. Who's got that? All right, Steve.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm joined by
Better introduce yourself to Member Coleman.
Oh, she was on the prep meeting. I met her there. So Steve Peterson, Met Council Project Manager on the Regional Solicitation. Molly Stewart from SRF Consulting is going to join me here as the Consultant Project Manager on this 3-year effort we've been on. But today we want to preview some future action items that are going to come before you in January. So with these actions today, and you can see at the top, the first 3 that we proposed, we are going to do an online budget tool. And we've done that the last 2 cycles. So it'll be an online budget tool to say if you had $300 million, where would you put that money? And we'll bring that feedback into the public comment period and can adjust based on public feedback. We also are planning to do events in all 7 counties with that online budgeting tool, where we'll do it on paper or in a computer form, but try and get out to all 7 counties too to get geographic spread of input there. So on to January. So next month at TAB, we will have an information item, probably a rather long information item on what you're about to see. And then the items in January will be the qualifying requirements. Number 4 is shown on the screen. Application criteria, measures, and scoring guidance. And that's really what our technical staff across the region have been working on in the last 6 months. The score weighting, which we're going to be talking about today, that was proposed by the technical staff, the score weighting, but it really is a policy issue on how much you want to weigh multimodal versus safety versus other things. So we want some feedback there. And then the last item is wrap up number 7. We're going to, it'll be approve the overall solicitation package and release it for public comment. So that'll be mid-January to mid-December will be the official public comment period. So Molly will come up at this point and talk a little bit about score weighting.
All right, thanks, Steve.
Hello, everyone. So as Steve mentioned, we're just going to preview this today. I will preface that the information that I'm presenting has gone through several rounds of technical review. We met with our special issue working groups, which was comprised of over 100 technical experts to establish initial weightings for each of the criteria. It went through several rounds of review over the summer and then was presented in draft form and in the application drafts in August and then again most recently here in October. So all of it's been, several changes have been made along the way to address some of the technical feedback and now we're bringing it forward for this group to then provide input on. So we're all familiar with our structure. We just approved this. So here, just as a preface, I'm going to go through each one of the categories. So each of the main categories, safety, bike ped, transit, and roadway, and then the environment. So starting with safety, I'll preface that the community considerations criteria, which is at the bottom of each one of these, is standard across each of the applications right now at 20%. It's been a topic of conversation, so just want to note that that's something we're going to explore with our technical, with TAC and our technical group in the coming weeks here. So starting with safety, so each of these categories, and maybe back up to this again, the category criteria were developed and to align with the goal area that they are under. So safety, primarily the criteria is focused on the safety goal area and reducing fatal and serious injury crashes, the bike ped, transit, and roadway. Most of the criteria is aligned with that dynamic and resilient goal area. For bike ped and roadway, you'll see there are safety criteria as well as that those two are kind of mixed applications where they are furthering 2 goal areas. And then in the environment, the application is aligning with the criteria there. I will note that the natural systems goal area falls under the roadway applications, as you'll see here. So each of these, the percentage scoring is broken up here on the slide. So this one under safety, there's a reactive and a proactive application. Majority of the points for the proactive one are going to that connection to the planning efforts. So how does the project connect to the regional safety action plan? And then for the reactive, primarily the large amount of percentage of points goes to that expected reduction in fatal and serious injury crashes. This category aligns very closely with what MnDOT's HSIP program does as far as the breakdown of points and the connection. And like I said, it was vetted through the technical group. And then at the bottom there is that community considerations criteria percentage of 20%. Keep going.
Member Vaughn?
Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did have a question, but I don't know if it makes sense to get to the end of all these categories and then circle back, so I'm happy to.
I think you could ask it in real time.
Super. Yeah, I was just curious about the 5% for the fatal and serious injury crash history. I understand there are some contexts where people don't try to walk or cross a place because they know it's going to be dangerous, so you don't actually have enough fatalities or serious injuries to then justify using it. So there's reasons to not want to overweight that, but I'm curious why for reactive measures that would only be 5% when in theory if it's a reactive measure it's looking at counter treatments based on a pattern of serious and fatal injuries. And so I'm just curious why that 5% would be that low on the reactive side. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Mr. Chair, if you will, I'll address that. So it wasn't that it's not an important measure. Right now, for reactive in particular, 35% of the points are going to that expected reduction for the 5-year crash period. So essentially that 10-year includes that 5-year plus an additional 5 years from there. The group, and this is how the MnDOT HSIP program works for the reactive one, it's the concentrated 5-year period tells maybe a more realistic story when you extend past 10 in cases of, where there's a systemic problem where it's been happening for 10 years. That was determined to be more of a tiebreaker, but which should focus more on the 5-year, the immediate problems that have been happening near term as a priority, and then look at where projects maybe have a systemic problem as a tiebreaker, if you will, is why the points are so low. For the proactive approach, the connection to planning effort. Similarly, the safety action plan, the regional safety action plan looked at that 5-year period again and identified risk corridors based on risk from a 5-year perspective. And then that 10-year would then be that tiebreaker. So that was, we only have 100 points, so divvying it up, the group wanted to put most of the emphasis on either the connection to plan for proactive or the 5-year crash period for the reactive.
Thank you very much.
Yep. All right.
Any other questions? Okay, please continue.
Madam Chair.
I did, sorry. I didn't see
Just a
numbers
quick
now.
question. What are the community considerations again?
So there are 3 criteria that are under that, and I believe we're going to discuss that the next meeting, or we can go into, I don't have slides on that, but we're going to talk about that in more detail, I think, at the next meeting. So. But they center around the connection to the equitable and inclusive goal area. There are 3 criteria. We had a big discussion today at the policymaker working group meeting, and are going to bring back some of that connection to discussion to the technical group, and then we'll have more information in December.
Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Going. So the bicycle and pedestrian category, this one's a little bit more complex, if you will. The regional bike category is aligning with that federal funding source, and then the local bike and local ped and AT planning, one are aligning with that, the active transportation sales dollars, which have legislation enacted that has specific criteria that need to be addressed. So that's why there's a little bit more information here. So the asterisk, the criteria, or the criteria with the asterisks are the ones that align specifically with the language that's in the legislation right now. So as you can see, there's a kind of varying range of connection to for each of the applications. For the regional bikeway, the highest percentage goes to that connection to the bicycle priorities, so that connection to the regional bicycle transportation network. And then the points are then split up amongst the other criteria from there. I noted safety is still a connection or a criteria that's considered in the bike ped category, but the rest of the criteria are all underlining into that dynamic and resilient goal area and the policies there. I will note that with the AT planning application, that one's a shortened application, so only has 3 criteria that you answer in that. One about safety, one about just the proposed project description, which kind of encompasses a lot of those other criteria that are part of that state legislation for the active transportation dollars. And then finally, that community considerations criteria, which is at the bottom for all 3 at 20%. We'll go into more details on these criteria in future meetings, but I'm happy to answer questions if there are some.
Member Lindeke, then Member Martinson.
I just wanted to chime in alongside Commissioner Zong about community considerations. You might want to word choice that, because it's too vague for me. It's like, that can mean anything. Just try to maybe brainstorm a couple more precise terms you could use for the category name. Just my advice.
Appreciate that. Yeah. The chosen words, because of the direction at the federal level right now, we didn't want to use equity in the title.
No, it makes sense now.
And so community consideration and the goal, the rule, the motivator behind the title of that was to connect to how does the project have access to the community. So the 3 criteria center around understanding the community, so the demographics that surround the corridor.
I get it.
Okay.
It's the new cloak around DEI. Yeah.
Should have started with
Thanks for the question, though. It was good. Yeah. All right. Member Martinson.
I'm going to borrow Member Foster's microphone since she's stepped out for a moment. So I gave written comment about this as well, but I want to say it out loud here, is that on the bike categories, I think probably both the regional and the local bike, I believe that there should be an element of scoring that rewards high-quality, state-of-the-art infrastructure more than lower quality, not state-of-the-art infrastructure. So for bicycle facilities, this would be grade-separated, protected bikeways. Some types of projects that should in fact be disallowed, like bike boulevards that only implement perhaps 1 or 2 of the 10 required elements of a genuine bike boulevard. And things that are like just painted lanes on streets maybe should, be scored lower as well. Sharrows, again, probably should not be funded. So there's no measures and there's no criteria for that right now. I think it's really necessary, quite honestly. Thanks.
Thanks for coming.
All right. Yeah, we'll take that up in conversation. All right. Go ahead. Keep going.
All right, so transit category then, again, under the dynamic and resilient umbrella goal area, there are 2 categories or 2 application categories in here, expansion and customer service. These ones align most similarly with the 2024 application. So I'll just maybe preface that there wasn't a ton of change. There was a little bit of tweaking, but generally they are pretty in alignment with the past application. We'll note again at the bottom, 20% community considerations criteria is noted there.
All right.
Okay. Roadway application. So there are 4 application categories right now under roadway, modernization, congestion management, new interchanges, and the bridge connections. This category is also very similar to the 2024 solicitation. Congestion management aligns maybe most similarly with it's a kind of a combination of the expansion or strategic expansion category and the traffic management technologies category, so combine projects that focus on reducing delay. And then the modernization is the one that's consistent with the 2024 application. So similar to bike ped, there's a combination of safety and mobility criteria here, so focusing on complete streets connections and the modernization, and then there are criteria that address freight and natural systems in all of the categories as well. So finally, then again, at the bottom, community considerations across all 4 application categories.
Go ahead.
All right, and then finally in the environment category, for 2026, only the TDM category will be a application category. Note that there was one for EV charging, that won't be until 2028. So for the TDM application, we'll also note again, this one is very similar to the 2024 solicitation or application, so didn't change a lot, other than the community considerations criteria at the bottom, which was added at a higher percent. I think that's all I had. So any other questions? Otherwise, I just got one next sub slide. So again, we're going to come back here in December with additional information. And then we are planning for a public comment period of these applications in January to mid-February with the intent to hopefully have a call for projects of this solicitation in April of next year with project selection by the end of 2026.
All right, thanks, Molly.
Yep.
Commissioner.
Thank you. I just want to say thanks for all the work on this. It's really nice to get to this place right now. And I feel like we've made some real progress, but I also believe that there's some really good conversations that have happened even in the policy work group. At Hennepin County, we've had some of those same conversations, and I think one of it was around the community considerations criteria. And I think that Hennepin County, I know we're going to be bringing in some other ideas and some other suggestions around that, just to it. And I think our big focus, again, is on safety. I think everybody around this table can say that safety is one of the number one things we need to be focusing on. And then the other thing, I just want to talk about bridges. You guys always hear me talk about bridges, but a lot of you have some aging bridges, right, around your community. We have a lot of those aging bridges. And I just want to say that we need to ensure some prioritization on that for the region's bridges to adequately consider the likelihood of a bridge failure. It's not like we haven't seen it. We've seen it here in our own hometown, but we've seen it around the nation. Let's make sure we're prioritizing that before they fail. And let's not have a ton of restrictions on these bridges. Let's get them fixed. That's my comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Member Dugan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Out of respect for Member Gattell and supporting the bridges, I fully understand it. I've been of the opinion that is a state responsibility or federal government, not a county responsibility or a TAB responsibility, where, I would certainly support you, ma'am. But
well, there's jurisdictions over all these bridges, and they're not all state.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. But if it comes down, much like 35, the state will be there in 24 hours, and they'll get the money, and they'll do it. That's the way it's going to happen, or the same way.
But not all bridges are owned by the state.
Well, yeah. But that isn't, I don't see, it's not a TAB function. I don't see it as a TAB function of incubating and getting projects done. I mean, that's an ongoing maintenance that the state, and the county better get their act together, or the federal government. That's like fixing airports, infrastructure.
But if those bridges go down, you stop freight, you stop economics, you stop a lot. So if we're not going to see the federal government step up on this, and we're not, yes. Then what are we going to do? We're going to let them fail?
Yes, you're exactly right. And it's just my opinion that I'm not sure it's a TAB matter, but I wouldn't go so far as to not support it, because bridges are important.
Well,
And
TAB has supported bridges in the past,
Yes.
and we've supported a lot of bridge projects
Yes,
because they're larger projects. They're parts of larger projects, and they also open up bike lanes and all kinds of pedestrian uses and
True. And
transit.
safety for our community is very important. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We got a lot of good work done today, folks. Member Johnson, I guess he wanted to.
Say something.
I did. I feel like I'm talking a lot today, so apologies. I had a clarifying question about the new interchanges category, because this is scoring, and again, I have no comments about sort of how this scoring works, but I understand that new interchanges are also going to be fit in within the identified regional, I don't want to say hotspots. I know there's a plan for this, or a evaluation of this that happened about identifying what are the, critical intersections that need replacement. And then out of those ones identified, they would apply to this. So I'm just wanting to understand if I'm correct in my understanding that would just not exist anywhere in the scoring. It would just be a qualifying criteria to even get in the mix.
Steve Peterson?
And if you have the name of the exact evaluation report, that'd be great, because I can never remember what it's called.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair and Glenn. The study is called the Intersection Mobility and Safety Study.
Thank you.
It looked at all the roadways in the metro area and identified high, medium, and low priorities for projects, not all those grade separations, some of those at-grade solutions too, but born out of that study and then put into the 2050 TPP were 4 specific intersections, and those would be the 4 at this point that could apply as a qualifying requirement for the $20 million. And not knowing which order they'll come in or how many will want to go at one time, that's why it remains a competitive category versus kind of a 1, 2, 3, 4 on the list.
Okay, that answers my question. Just it's a qualifying criteria and would not exist in the scoring. So thank you for clarifying.
All right, thank you. Commissioner.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Member Johnson, I'm really glad you brought that up because it reminded me of a lot of work that's being done right now with some state agencies to come up with predictive models and actual models about what is going on in the state and the 7-county metro. And so this leads me to the next solicitation criteria and figuring out how that data then will impact future applications, because to me, I don't know if that will even prevent MnDOT from needing to do that study anymore, because it's way more technologically advanced, creates so many data points and data sources. It's pretty impressive. So just wanted to bring that up with some of the work that the Advisory Council on Traffic Safety is doing. Yeah.
Good. Thanks, Commissioner. Other thoughts for the good of the order? Anybody from the policymaker work group want to talk a little bit about that community considerations conversation we had today? Okay. All right, I think as you all saw during the presentation, the community considerations allocation is 20% across category, and it's the same as safety. And so one of the issues that was brought up was weighting, and so we had I think a robust discussion, an in-depth conversation about all the different factors that we were thinking about and the considerations around community considerations. And so then we asked the TAC to come back and meet and address some of the issues that we talked about in the policymaker work group. And so we'll have that information from the TAC back when we meet again in December. So when we come back here in December, we should have more information for you to share and then have another, I think, in-depth conversation about that particular scoring criteria, including the weighting it should be given. So that'll be a good conversation. There was some good thoughts advanced as to the importance of this in our overall considerations of projects. So I think that's it. Anybody else got anything? Sorry, I was coughing away here. I went to Rio and back in 4 days for the World Mayor Conference on Climate. I got invited by Bloomberg Philanthropies to go down there on their nickel. So I think it cost my town $40 to send me to the airport, which was great.
For climate?
But I did manage to compress a lot of work and travel in 4 days, and I'm paying a price for it. So thanks for your patience as I cough once in a while. So anyway, yeah, that's it. I think, folks, have a great Thanksgiving, everybody. And Member Coleman, welcome. Member Coleman. Yeah, give her a poke there, Judge. Member Coleman, we'll hope to see you again.
All right. If I don't hear from you, I'll set it up.
Yeah.
If you're not coming.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
Yeah, it's not that big a deal.